He stood in the glass-walled boardroom, arrogance dripping from every word. "You're not my type," he told her. Eyes colder than the empire, he ruled. She swallowed the sting, hiding the tears that wanted to fall. For him, she was just another employee, quiet, ordinary, forgettable. But what he didn't know was that the night he walked away, he left something far more precious behind. 3 years later, fate didn't knock, it kicked the door open. At a charity event, he froze mid-speech as 2 little boys ran past him, laughing with the same dimple he saw in the mirror every morning. Then he saw her confident, graceful, no longer the timid girl he dismissed. And in that moment, the man who had everything realized what he'd lost, and who those twins truly belonged to. The rain fell softly against the towering glass windows of Vander Group headquarters, streaking the skyline with silver. Inside, under the glow of dim lights and the hum of ambition, stood Alexander Reed, the youngest self-made millionaire CEO in the city. His charm was magnetic, his confidence lethal, and his heart carefully guarded behind walls built from ego and success. Across from him stood Lila Hart, his new assistant. She wasn't glamorous like the women that usually surrounded him. No designer heels, no red lips, no polished arrogance. Just simple grace, a quiet presence that seemed out of place in a world that thrived on noise. She admired him, not for his wealth, but for his discipline, his vision, and that sharp focus that made everyone listen. But admiration has a way of turning into something deeper, and for Lila, it did. Over months of long nights and quiet dinners after meetings, their connection deepened. She learned the man behind the title, the boy who grew up poor, the dreamer who refused to lose, the soul that still feared love. Until one evening, it all came crashing down. Lila waited in his office with trembling hands, holding the courage she'd built over weeks. I think I've fallen for you," she confessed softly. Alexander looked up, his expression unreadable. He leaned back, studying her like a contract he wasn't sure he wanted to sign. Then came the sentence that would carve itself into her memory forever. "You're not my type, Lila." Just 5 words. Cold final. He stood, straightened his tie and added, "You're smart and kind, but I don't date employees. And even if I did, we're from different worlds." Her eyes stung. She wanted to ask, "What world am I from then?" But she didn't. She simply nodded, whispered a shaky "I understand," and walked out, her heart heavier than the rain outside. That night, she packed her things. No resignation letter, no goodbye, just silence. She disappeared from his world as if she'd never existed. But something else began growing inside her. A secret that would one day rewrite both their destinies. 2 months later, Lila sat alone in a small clinic, clutching a piece of paper that confirmed what she already knew. She was pregnant. Her first instinct was fear. How could she raise a child alone, with no job, no support, no family nearby? But then, she placed her hand over her belly, and a strange calm filled her chest. "I'll do this," she whispered. "We'll be okay." She moved out of the city, away from the steel towers and corporate whispers. She found a modest house near the coast, got a small job teaching art to children, and slowly built a life that revolved around 2 heartbeats, her babies. Yes, babies. The day the doctor smiled and said, "It's twins," she laughed through her tears. Fate, it seemed, had given her double the love to heal the pain she'd endured. Every time she looked into their faces, she saw pieces of him, Alexander's dark eyes, his dimple, his stubborn jawline. But she also saw something he never had, warmth. Meanwhile, back in the city, Alexander's empire grew. More awards, more deals, more headlines. But his nights were lonelier than ever. Every time he heard laughter echo through the halls, he thought of her. He told himself he didn't miss her, only the efficiency, the quiet balance she brought. But sometimes, when the office was empty, he caught himself staring at her old desk. Where did she go? He didn't know, and that bothered him more than he was willing to admit. Years passed. Lila's twins, Eli and Evan, grew into bright, mischievous boys, who filled every corner of her world with chaos and laughter. She told them bedtime stories about courage, not princes, about strength, not wealth. "Mommy," Eli would ask, "where's our daddy?" Lila would smile softly and say, "He's someone who wasn't ready to meet you yet." But fate, as it always does, had its own plans. 3 years later, a letter arrived in her mailbox, an invitation to a charity gala hosted by the Vander Foundation. Lila almost threw it away, but something in her whispered, maybe it's time to face the past. She didn't go there for revenge. She went because she wanted closure, to see if the man who once broke her heart had changed, or if she had just learned to stop hurting. That night, she wore a simple black gown, elegant yet modest. Her hair cascaded softly over her shoulders. And when she walked into the hall, every head turned, including his. Alexander froze. For a second, the crowd, the music, the speeches, everything blurred. It was her. The woman he had told wasn't his type, but now, she looked like everything he had ever wanted. And then, before he could even process his thoughts, two little boys ran past him, laughing, chasing each other. He smiled until one of them bumped into his leg. The boy looked up, and Alexander's smile vanished. The child had his eyes. Alexander Reed froze. The sound of laughter faded, replaced by the pounding of his own heartbeat. The boy's eyes, dark, sharp, and impossibly familiar, stared up at him with innocent curiosity. "Sorry, mister," the little one said, his tiny hands brushing dust off Alexander's tailored suit. It's fine," he managed to whisper, still staring. Then he saw another one, the same dimple, the same grin. Twins. They darted back toward a woman standing near the buffet table. When she turned, time stopped. Leela Hart. She wasn't the timid assistant he remembered. She was radiant, confident, poised, and surrounded by an aura that came only from surviving heartbreak and rebuilding yourself stronger. Their eyes met. A silent storm raged between them, 3 years of unspoken words. Regret and disbelief compressed into one look. Alexander took a step forward. "Leela," but she turned away, calmly, deliberately, as if his voice was just another noise in the background. It was the first time in his life someone had walked away from him again. He spent the rest of the evening searching for an opportunity to speak to her, but she was a ghost in the crowd, polite to others, distant from him. Every time he approached, she found a reason to walk away. When the event ended, he caught her near the exit. "Wait," he said, blocking her path. "We need to talk." "There's nothing left to say, Mr. Reed," she replied evenly. His heart clenched at the name, Mr. Reed. Not Alex, not even Alexander, just formality, distance. "I saw the boys," he said quietly. "Leela, are they?" She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Does it matter?" That hit harder than any truth could. "Of course it matters," he said, frustration cracking his voice. "If they're mine, I have a right." She cut him off sharply. "You had a right, Alexander. You gave it up the day you said I wasn't your type." He fell silent. Around them, guests trickled out, the sound of heels fading into the marble hall. For the first time in years, Alexander Reed, the man who commanded boardrooms and built empires, didn't know what to say. Lila stepped closer. Her voice softened, but her eyes remained steady. "You built your life on choosing what looked perfect. I was never perfect for your world, but for theirs." She glanced toward her sons. "I was enough." And with that, she walked away again, leaving him standing in the same silence she had once left behind. That night, Alexander didn't go home. He drove aimlessly through the city, memories flooding back. Her laughter during late nights at the office, the way she believed in him when he doubted himself, the way her presence made even silence feel alive. And then the memory of that night. "You're not my type." He had meant to protect himself, to keep business and emotions separate, but somewhere along the line, he had confused power with pride. He reached home near dawn. The penthouse felt colder than ever. He poured himself a drink, but it didn't warm him. On the coffee table sat a photo from a recent magazine, Alexander Reed, the man who has it all. He stared at it and whispered, "No, I don't." Over the next few weeks, he couldn't focus. Every meeting blurred into noise. His assistants whispered, investors noticed his distraction, but he didn't care. He needed to see them again, her again. He finally found her address through a contact. One afternoon, he drove to a quiet coastal town and parked across from a small art center. Through the window, he saw Lila teaching a group of children how to paint. Her laughter filled the room, light and unrestrained. And then, two little boys ran up, waving drawings. She knelt, kissed their foreheads, and helped them clean up their brushes. He felt a lump form in his throat. "My sons." He didn't knock that day. He couldn't. Instead, he watched from afar, the woman he once underestimated, and the family that should have been his. Days later, Lila came home from work to find a black car parked outside her house. Alexander stepped out, holding a small bouquet of white lilies. "Before you say anything," he started, "I'm not here to take them from you. I just want to know them." Leela crossed her arms. "You think you can just walk back in?" He looked at her, truly looked this time. No boardroom confidence. No cold tone. Just honesty. "No, I know I can't erase what I said, but I can start by not walking away again." Her silence stretched. Then, with a sigh, she opened the door slightly. There in the backyard. He followed her. Heart pounding, the twins were building a sandcastle in a small sandbox. When they looked up, one of them tilted his head curiously. "Mommy, who's that?" Lila hesitated. "That's Alexander." Eli smiled. "You mean Mr. Rich Guy from TV?" Alexander chuckled softly, kneeling down. "Something like that." Evan handed him a small toy shovel. "You can help if you want." And for the first time in his life, the millionaire CEO, the man who ruled everything, sat down in the dirt and helped build a sandcastle. Over the following weeks, he visited often, not as a businessman, but as a man learning what truly mattered. He brought no gifts, no promises, just time. He played with the twins, helped Lila at the art center, and began to rebuild what he had broken with 5 careless words. The town started whispering. Of course, the CEO and his former assistant, the twins with his eyes. But for once, Alexander didn't care about headlines. He was learning something wealth had never taught him: humility, patience, and the quiet power of forgiveness. Still, one truth remained: he hadn't asked the question burning in his heart. Could she ever love him again? Weeks turned into months. The small coastal town that once felt too quiet now held echoes of laughter, the sound of running feet, and a warmth Alexander never knew he was missing. Every afternoon, he'd stop by the art center after his meetings. Sometimes he brought snacks for the twins. Sometimes, he just watched them paint. The boys had accepted him easily. They didn't care about his status or mistakes. To them, he was the man who built sandcastles and listened to their stories. But for Leela, it wasn't that simple. She had rebuilt her world from ashes, piece by piece. Letting him close again meant risking everything she'd protected: her peace, her heart, her son's safety. One evening, as the sun dipped into the horizon, Alexander helped her close up the art center. He handed her the keys and said quietly, "I've been thinking of opening a children's art wing under my company's foundation. You could run it, if you'd like." She smiled faintly. "Is this another business proposal, Mr. Reed?" He shook his head. "No. This time, it's an apology, in the only language I know." For the first time, she laughed softly, genuinely. The sound tugged at something deep inside him. He looked at her for a long moment. "Lila, can I ask you something?" She hesitated. "If it's about the twins, it's not." He interrupted gently. "It's about us." Silence hung between them. The waves crashed softly outside, and for a second, it felt like time itself was waiting. "I was a fool," he said finally. "I thought success meant never needing anyone. I thought feelings made me weak. But you showed me what strength really is. You raised them alone, built a life without me, and never once came asking for help." Her eyes glistened. "Because I didn't want their lives to begin with rejection." He swallowed hard. "And yet here I am, trying to rewrite it." For weeks after that, she kept her distance, polite, guarded, but she couldn't ignore the change in him. He was softer now, patient. He remembered the twins' birthdays, attended their school play, even painted with them despite ruining every canvas. One night, she found him sitting on a bench outside her house, looking exhausted. "You're late," she teased gently. He smiled. "I had a meeting." Walked out halfway through. Her brow arched. "You walked out of a meeting?" He nodded. "They were arguing about numbers. But all I could think about was Eli's soccer game tomorrow." Lila didn't know what to say. The man who once dismissed her as not his type was now prioritizing a child's soccer match over $1 million deals. "You've changed," she whispered. He looked up at her, eyes soft. "No, Leela. I finally started seeing what matters." She turned away, hiding the tears forming in her eyes. "And what if I can't forgive you?" He stood slowly, walking closer. "Then I'll wait. Every day, until you do." Months passed. The art center's new wing opened, sponsored by the Reed Foundation. Children from all over the region attended free classes. Leela's dream finally had a heartbeat. During the opening ceremony, the twins insisted Alexander cut the ribbon with their mom. Cameras flashed, applause echoed, but for Alexander, the only thing that mattered was the smile on Lila's face, one he hadn't seen in years. That night, when everyone had left, Leela found him sitting by the shore, shoes off, feet buried in the sand. The city lights twinkled faintly in the distance. "You never did like to sit still," she said softly. He smiled. "Maybe I was just waiting for the right reason to stop." She sat beside him, wrapping her shawl around her shoulders. The ocean breeze carried silence between them, the kind that didn't need words. Finally, she said, "They love you, you know. The twins. They talk about you non-stop." He chuckled. I'm starting to think they just tolerate me because I buy them too many coloring sets." Her laugh was quiet but warm. Then, after a pause, she added, "You've done more for them than I ever expected." Alexander turned to her. "I didn't do it for them alone, Lila. I did it for you, because I still—" She placed a finger on his lips. "Don't say it unless you mean it." He gently took her hand. "I do. I meant it the moment I saw you that night at the gala. I just didn't have the courage to admit it." Her eyes softened. "People don't change overnight, Alexander." "I didn't," he said quietly. "I grew up, and I realized love isn't about finding your type. It's about finding your truth." The silence that followed was heavy, not with tension, but with something deeper, healing. Lila leaned her head on his shoulder. The stars shimmered above, and the waves whispered stories of forgiveness. "I don't know what the future holds," she said. "Neither do I," he replied, "but I know I don't want to face it without you, or them." She looked up at him, eyes glistening under the moonlight. "You're still impossible." He smiled, his voice a whisper. "Maybe, but I'm yours, impossible and all." And for the first time since that painful day in his office, Lila didn't walk away. A year later, the Reedhart Foundation for Children became one of the most successful community projects in the country. The twins started calling him Dad naturally, not because they were told to, but because they wanted to. And every time Alexander looked at his family, he silently thanked fate for giving him a second chance, the kind of redemption money could never buy. He once said she wasn't his type. Now, she was his home. Sometimes, life doesn't give us second chances, but when it does, it's rarely in the form we expect. Alexander learned that love isn't about perfection or timing. It's about presence. It's about showing up, not when it's easy, but when it's hard. If you've ever been told you're not enough, remember this. Someday, the person who overlooked you might realize you were the one thing they couldn't replace. Tell me in the comments if you were Lila, would you forgive him? And don't forget to follow for more emotional stories like this one where power meets heart. And love always finds its way back.